Hello, hello, hello. I hope you're all well. Today I'm going to be continuing this spread in my sketchbook, but I'm going to try and take this guy in a slightly different direction to what I normally do. And the first thing I'm going to do is completely change the base layer. Well, not completely, but somewhat change the base layer of how I paint a pale skin tone. So I'm mixing something not enough. I need way more paint than that. Come on. So now that I'm back on track, let's get that speck out of there. Come on. Get out. Get lost. There we go. Yeah, like I said, I'm changing the base layer slightly, so quite a lot weaker than normal. I want it quite a lot weaker. And I'm going to add more blue in than I normally do. I really want to sort of grey this off and have it quite have him looking a little bit sort of translucent, if that makes sense. But this is quite grey, so let me try it. I need more blue. I'm just going to completely go for it. No, that looks a little bit too grey now. Well, it came in with this really big idea. I just don't know how to mix that colour. I'm trying to go for sort of a translucent skin tone. So let's try again. I think what I'll do is probably just mix a very pale, like regular flesh tone, and then maybe charge in with some blue. So I want a little bit more red in there, I think. Yeah, that should be nice and pale, that. So I'm going to just be really messy with it. Get this whole layer done so that while it's wet, I can add some blue and red into the wash. And while I'm painting, I'm actually going to try and make his eyes a bit smaller because they're really big on his face, and I don't really know why I did that. So it's interesting when you step away from something for a while and then you see it with sort of fresh eyes later. Do I want to put blue in? That's very strong. It will brighten up a bit, but it's almost a bit too strong. Then I'm going to pop in a tiny bit of blush. There we go. I think that's kind of what I was going for. I think there's a bit more blue on this side, and a little bit more red in his nose. I almost want to be sort of dry brushing it at this point, so I wipe my brush off and put it in my red. It will just help the pigment stay where it is rather than bleeding out too much. A tiny bit up in his ear. So I kind of want him like blushing and flushed, and typically not a very happy chap. A little bit sad with the redness under the eyes. But all in all, yeah, all in all, just kind of going to the extreme of a light skin tone, really. Because I normally mix red, yellow and blue together quite strongly, so we're not really sort of too far away from something around like here, you know, a couple of shades lighter is sort of the darkest that I'll go, and then I'll overlay blue. But I think with him, that could be, I mean, aside from some shading and stuff, that could be as far as I want to go maybe, but we'll see. So you can see that the paint is spread, the red is spread a little bit too far out from his mouth. With a damp brush, so it's really, I always say this, but it's really not wet, it's just damp. I'm just brushing it over the edges, and this just takes some of the kind of spidery, tendrily bits of paint away from the paper and smooths it out a bit. So you've got to be quite patient with it and sometimes just let it do its thing, but you can sort of fix stuff if you need to. Just with a damp brush. It just stops too much water getting flooded onto the page and giving you a back run. So if you discharge too much water, that can happen. And with a dry, an almost dry but damp brush with no water, almost, you know, with no water on it, likes to absorb water. So it will absorb whatever you've put on the paper rather than flooding it with clean water. I'm waffling, I think you get the picture. Okay, the second layer I'm going to do a little bit more carefully than the first one, because you can see I've gone over the lines a little bit. So I'm going to try and be a little bit more careful. And paint maybe a little bit looser. I say maybe, but I'm already doing it, so. It does sort of warm up the areas that I've put in shadow, but that's okay. Right, that's a damp brush again there. Only really for this area that I don't want to bleed too much. Whereas this shadow here I want quite sharp, so that's with a damp brush I've done that, just to bleed that edge out. And there again on the edge as well. So I just want that harsh line of light on his cheekbone there. And in fact, I probably want to take that up just a smidge higher. Then I'm going to do the same thing I did before, Pop a little bit of red in there. Probably do the same for his lips as well, but water it down a little bit. Just want to put a touch on his top lip. As usual. And a little bit under his eye as well. So going a little bit more extreme, again a damp brush just to blend this out. So going a little bit more extreme with the red in contrast to his, overall skin tone is quite exciting in a sense, because it kind of just really draws the eye to his facial features. And then, I'm going to take that skin tone that I used earlier for the second layer on his face and start layering up down here as well. Again, I'm trying to be deliberately loose. I know you all know how naughty I am by using my finger all the time. It's a really bad habit, but sometimes just smudging something with your finger dries the paper just enough that you don't need to go to kind of the trouble of blending a lot. Okay, I think it's probably time to let that dry again. Just over here, I've done like the range in hue throughout his skin tone and tried out which kind of shadows I'm going to use. And I think instead of blue, I'm going to use that as like a tonal variant within his skin tone. But I think for the shadows, I'm probably going to use like a really diluted Payne's Grey. More diluted than this, but we'll see. I've tried Moonglow as well, and I just don't know about purple in this. I want this to be quite sort of delicately, almost like floral in terms of like the hues in his face, and then have something completely contrasting. I think the purple that the Moonglow kind of makes will just keep it a bit too colourful. I really want to keep like the light nice and delicate and the shadow quite stark. So we'll see. I think just one final layer then for his face. I don't think I should have done that bit. See how much I can lift off. Not very much. Yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't done that last layer. But it might look fine once I've put the darker details in his face. So I'm just going to dry brush in with some blue like I was before. I need to be quite careful that I don't make it muddy. Some of that up. Maybe go in with some red instead. Oh, what have I done to this side of his head? Alright, lots of water while it's damp to just blend over. Then go in with a bit more blue. I said I was going to do Payne's Grey, but it looks like I'm filling in with blue. Yeah, I don't know if I'm brave enough to do the Payne's Grey, to be honest. With a damp brush I want to lift some of that colour off because that was a bit too strong. I'm just going to blur the edge with my damp brush. Keep things looking nice and soft. And then this whole side of his chest I'm going to make bluer as well, because that will all be in shadow. So I've wet that, and then I'm going in with some blue paint, and that will just spread and look really lovely, hopefully, and not patchy. Let's move that about a bit and make it a bit stronger down here. So I've popped that colour in. I'm going to take some of my skin tone, wipe my brush off so it's damp, and then blend it out. Wipe my brush off, and then blend it again. Okay. Like I said, this looks mad until some of the features are painted in, and then they won't look as stark. And to control the wetness, it's quite wet up at the top of his head, so to control the wetness I'm just going to dab some of that off so that I can blend that edge out. There we go, just lift up some of that pigment again with a damp brush. Okay, and then my brush isn't too wet here. I'm going to draw in the shadow under his nose. And last one, I think, is just increasing the shadow under there. I think I'm going to mix some Payne's Grey with the ultramarine. Can you see that on the colour? Yeah, just about. Just so that I've got a slightly dingier colour. Dingy's never a word you want to use, but I want something that's a little bit less vibrant, and that's where I'm going to do some of my darkest shadows once that's dry. Okay, then for a couple of, I still needed some ultramarine blue, that's really annoying. Just a couple of the finer details that I don't want to go too dark on. Just going to paint a little bit in there and then tap it away, move it around a bit with my finger. There we go. Right, then with this mixture of Payne's Grey and ultramarine, it's kind of this dusty blue colour. Just going to very carefully apply it to some areas that are sort of darkest. Again, I don't want to be going too strong. There we go. It just takes some of the what I like to call electricity out of the ultramarine. It's just quite bright, so this is a nice way of adding like a muted depth to my paintings. Oh, that's made his nose look a bit strange. Let's try and blend some of that out. Right, and by contrast, that's kind of made it's sort of muted the red a bit too much on his lips and elsewhere, so I'm just going to take a little bit more. And add a bit of vibrancy back in. Damn it, I forgot to hit record. This is this is so annoying. It's happened in the last video. I added some more shadow down his front and I'm not sure I'm entirely happy with it, but I like the mark making. But I guess that's what sketchbooks are for, right? Experimentation and seeing what works. Throw stuff at a wall and see what sticks. You all know the phrase. So I think the only thing left really is to start blocking in some of the really dark details, like his hair, eyebrows, eyes, nose and lips and stuff, and bring his face together and see if it's worked. I'm not entirely convinced, but it's really useful to play around with stuff, as I said. Sorry, I didn't talk through that whole thing because I was concentrating on actually painting some texture into hair for a change. But I think I actually need some darker shadow again, so I think I might just be brave and go with the Payne's Grey, because something needs to balance with his hair. And I hate to do this, but I actually think it's gonna work. He says tentatively, very tentatively. No, they need to be darker if that's gonna be the case. Not entirely convinced about how this has turned out. I'm probably going to be saying that forever and ever and ever. Well, till the end of this video. Well, there you have it. An experimentation in a loose watercolour portrait. Bloody thing for the line work. Here we go, that's better. I'm definitely going to need a change of palette later for the next painting. Okay, so let's see if I can save this out. Let's see if I can salvage this edge. It's almost too... I think I need like a dirty blue rather than a... Could I go green? Let's be bold, be crazy. I'm trying to sort of play around with how I do things. I think the only real way you know when you don't like something is when you've done it. You can never really know whether something was worth trying until it's tried. If that makes any sense. That looks better. and that, and that. I think looks a little bit better. Anyway, yeah, you don't really know until you've tried something to say, yeah, that's not for me. And I think the only way that I'm going to get some of that mark making into my work with all the smoothness as well is just to keep trying it. It's like a style change kind of thing. And I don't even know if that's something that I want to really take forward, but it's something I'm interested in experimenting with. So I may decide that I absolutely hate it and that I, want to continue painting in my kind of, I don't know, trademark smooth style for at least the foreseeable future. But I hope you learned something about controlling bleed and everything like that I was doing in this, and maybe about colour contrast as well. So like where shadows look horrendous and way too dark while I'm painting him before all the darkest details go in, as soon as you put those in, you almost need to make them even deeper. So it's kind of this balancing act. You're sort of nudging your values until they're just right. So that little bit that I just put under in the corner of his eye there, that's the kind of nudging that I've been doing the whole time while I've been painting. So yeah, if you try anything, let me know about it. I'd love to see it. And I'll see you in the next post.